We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Spring ball is here, and we got a commitment to talk about. Hey, I was ready to go live about 30, 45 minutes ago, and then, boom, it drops on us. Linebacker Izayia Williams commits to the Gators, 2026 linebacker. So, hey, that room continuing to recruit and get better. Opening press conference of Billy Napier and the Gators, spring ball starting too. So plenty to get into on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Lots to get into. I had something in my eye. As soon as I hit live, I don't know, something in my eye there. But there we go. I think I got it out. It's going to bother me probably the whole episode. So there we go. If you're watching live, you'll probably see me. I was blinking like crazy. Let me rub it right quick. Hey, beauty of live right here. Something in my right eye. There we go. Hopefully I got it. But hey, that's what happens when you do a live show sometimes. So, but hey, plenty to get into, of course. Opening press conference of Billy Napier laying out a whole lot as spring football gets started. See the team on the practice field this evening as well. The big news, quarterback DJ Lagway being limited this spring. And then a couple other storylines, and we'll get into some more injuries as well. But also Billy Napier saying, and maybe expected a bit too, but at that right tackle spot, Bryce Lovett going to be starting there at right tackle for the Gators. And we'll get into more of that too. And then LJ McCray in his second year sliding over, was already playing the edge, but that's broken up into the edge F spot and then the edge Jack spot. Well, McCray played more of that F spot last year, but sliding over to Jack this year. So we'll get into all that right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. And then wrap it up, of course, with the commitment of Izayia Williams to the Gators. So a loaded episode right here of Gators Breakdown. Make sure you hit that like button. That really helps us out. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform if you haven't done so yet. Hey, what are you waiting on? Hey, look, and if you follow Gators Breakdown for a while, you know how we do spring. It'll be kind of position by position, certain episodes when we hear from certain coaches and players and all that good stuff. I know there's a ton of interviews that'll be coming out from press conferences in the next few days. So certainly hit spring practice with a good bit. We'll get into some position talk here, of course, as well. Kind of just goes, but we'll dive heavier into the positions when we hear from position coaches and all that good stuff. So lots going on, and lots going on at Florida Victorious. Our coverage of spring football is brought to you by Florida Victorious. All spring long, and with all the new going on, it's a great time to join. You can be the difference by joining Florida Victorious. Your support can directly impact the outcome on the field. You want to help the Gators win? You want a better game day experience? Well, just like when you pack the swamp, your unwavering support through Florida Victorious empowers the Gators to be their best. If you enjoy player access, you'll find even more of it at Florida Victorious. Members receive invitations to exclusive events like the meet and greet that'll be after the spring game, access to exclusive merchandise and memorabilia, great sports covers from Nick De La Torre, and more. There's never been a better time to join. So join today and make a difference in bringing victory to the orange and blue. Visit floridavictorious.com to join now. All right, here we go. Let's get into the big news here. We will hear from Billy Napier on this topic, and that is, of course, quarterback DJ Lagway being limited, and we'll get into some other injuries as well. Here was Napier's full comments on the injured players. Quote, you're going to see a number of players that will be modified in terms of their participation in spring practice. The following players will be limited. Caleb Banks has a foot injury. Sharif Denson is still on his way back in return-to-play mode with a foot from the postseason. Chad Gasper arrived with an ACL reconstruction. Aaron Gates, Jameer Grimsley obviously had the knee injuries. Pup Howard had a soft tissue injury. DJ Lagway will be limited in terms of his participation in spring from a throwing component with the shoulder and then also the lower body injury. John Johnson had the shoulder surgery there. So the back half of spring will get him back. Paul Kessler has a lower back injury. So, of course, that's the first time he mentioned DJ Lagway in the press conference. And he was, I would have started with it with DJ Lagway, but yeah, Billy Napier starts, and a few defensive players, and Caleb Banks kind of a surprise with the foot, but all the other ones we kind of knew about. And then right in the middle of it, and DJ Lagway's limited, by the way. So, of course, he was going to be asked about it. And to go deeper into it, so here's what Billy Napier had to say on the limitation of DJ Lagway.
So I think some lower body, some shoulder. I think our intentions here are to be very smart. I do think he'll be limited in throwing activities, but he'll participate in all practices otherwise. And we've done a lot of homework here relative to the things that he went through as a player. I mean, he was an absolute warrior and a great competitor that showed toughness. And we've consulted with quite a few experts here from a UFL, from a national perspective, as we do with a lot of our players, in terms of second opinion. So I think in general, he'll be able to do quite a bit, but there will be some limitations.
How much do you expand the playbook with him going into his second year?
Yeah, I think probably we would start with, okay, fundamentally, all right, these are the areas where we got to really take next steps. I think last year was a lot more about what to do. Now it's the how to do it. It's why we're doing it. It's down and distance. It's field zones. It's situational football. And again, think about his progression. Took 1 million reps with the twos, and then all of a sudden he's thrown into the fire there. So huge benefit from an experience standpoint on game day, but also in practice. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, much like any player in the second year, there'll be a lot of things that he can do that we'll try to complement. We do that with every player on the team in terms of, okay, hey, lingering issues, go back and attack those and then adjust their workflow. And again, this is not a normal here. I think we're going to be really intentional about how we design every practice, for him. I think in terms of, like, we've even talked about letting him be the signal caller. Like today in 7-on-7, I think we're going to let him walkie-talkie the play into the quarterback, give him some of that. We're going to, as certain periods, he'll be able to do more than others, right? So I think that'll progress as we go in spring, but we're going to challenge him. I think, when growth and comfort can't coexist, right? So, I think for him, we're pushing the envelope, trying to make him uncomfortable. I still think it's his team, so from a leadership perspective, he's got a much different role and voice, right? I also think he's got to navigate success a little bit. Can he separate noise and hype? Can he live in the middle there? Can he become process oriented? Can he separate process and outcome? Can he continue to be consistent in that regard? So maintaining that humility, staying grounded, and then also pushing the envelope from a development standpoint. There's a lot to do there, and I know he'd be the first to tell you he's excited about that.
All right, so there we go. A lot there on DJ Lagway, of course, and coming from being limited. And look, for me, I think we had this conversation there with Will the other day on the last episode of Gators Breakdown, where we did a Q&A session for spring, and it'd probably be more mental for Lagway in year two. And that's not to say he doesn't need improvement physically as well. And touch on the ball when he should zing it in, when he shouldn't zing it in. Check downs, that's mentally too, and but of course there's some physical parts of that as well. But we know for Lagway, the physical part's probably a little more further along than the mental part. And look, to be expected, he's going into a second year. It's not a shot at him. It's just the natural progression of things. And yes, he needs reps, but probably needs more mental reps at this point. And look, he's not completely shut down here. I think this got overblown a little bit. And now certainly, it's your starting quarterback. It's the 5-star. It's the guy we've waited for. And certainly I wish he was out there 100% and ready to go and getting a rapport with the receivers and getting back in groove with his offensive linemen and all that stuff. Sure, that would be ideal. That would be the better avenue here. But you can tell they're going to be working on a lot of other things too. And I think the mental aspect will do a lot of good for DJ Lagway as well. I mean, yes, I'd rather have him out there. He's 100%. He's ready to go, 100% ready to go physically and 100% mentally. Not the case right now. But if it was anything major, I think we would have heard about it before now, and he wouldn't be out there at all. So, now let's go back to this. And part of where this got overblown was because there was, some thought out there that, oh, this is coming out of nowhere with the shoulder injury. Where did this come from? It's not new. And I had to make sure that was stressed on X after some things that would go out there. And it goes back to last season. And let's go back to early part of the season. This is after the Samford game. So Florida played Miami, Florida played Samford. And, of course, Mertz gets hurt versus Miami. Lagway has to take over and then starts, of course, the Samford game. Well, Napier was talking after that Samford game and revealed, quote, about DJ Lagway. He's been battling. His arm has not necessarily been 100% the last couple of weeks. He's been banged up a little bit. I think he finally kind of, at the end of the week this week, was healthy. You saw that tonight. Then Napier was asked more about it, and he replied, Lagway just had it coming out of camp. I think it's just a volume thing for a rookie, just a wear and tear of training camp and the number of throws. No significant issue there. But it was an issue right there heading into Miami. I think he had a phenomenal week, and he's 100% healthy now. So that was after the Samford game, after 2 games, just a couple of hairy weeks there for DJ Lagway. And Napier certainly wasn't worried. He played Lagway. We saw what he did against Samford and saw what he did later on in the season. But you go back and remember when we thought we might see Lagway more and earlier than we did versus Miami, but it wasn't until Mertz was injured until we saw Lagway. That's what it was. So later on in that press conference, later that night, DJ was asked about it, and this is what he had to say. DJ, on that note, Billy told us that you've been dealing with an injury that held you back a little bit in practice. How difficult was that to go through, wanting to get all the reps that you could, but having to wait until you could get the green light? And Lagway responded, yeah, that was really difficult. That definitely was messing with my mental a little bit. I had a little something going on before the Miami game with my shoulder. So it was just like, got to be ready for my opportunity. And I wasn't going to let a shoulder lose the opportunity. So I just feel like I got to stay getting healthy, continue to get better, just working on my footwork and reps and stuff like that. So there we go. It's not a new thing. In case you forgot as well about the shoulder thing as well. I'm not. That certainly can happen because look, he played through it. He ended up playing versus Miami. Ended up playing early in the season versus Samford, throwing the ball all over the place, and we get all excited and stuff. So as I said, it certainly raises, the radar and the pings a little bit. I'm not all that concerned. I asked around when this came out, and the people I talked to do not seem concerned all that much about it. So there we go. If you are, like I said, I get it. It's DJ Lagway. It's certainly alarming. It's not concerning. That's probably the best way for me to put it right now. Of course, there's still the hamstring issue too. But everything I can gather and asking around, there's just not much to worry about in terms of long-term effects for DJ Lagway and these injuries right now. So one more time, yes, I'd rather have him out there throwing the ball over the place and doing as much as he can. And like I said, he won't be completely shut down. It's alarming because it's our prized quarterback, but alarming doesn't mean concerning. Just where I'll leave it now. Hopefully nothing gets worse. I mean, if it stays as it is right now, I think it's A-okay. Hopefully nothing gets worse there. Some lingering issues here, it seems like, from the season. So a couple comments here. Harrison, I will get back to yours. Do you think the staff... Okay, yep, I'll get back to that one. Jeremy, yep, just mentioning all this stuff of here. I mean, of course, it's the hamstring from the late last season, and the shoulder that just seemed to be lingering as well. Jason Sauls does say, hey, keep Lagway clean, and there will be a 4th statue outside of Ben Hill Griffin. That's the plan, and Jason, that's the plan. Let's keep up with quarterback for a second and talk about injuries as well. As we went through that list of injuries a bit there from Billy Napier and Tramel Jones, the other quarterback. Hey, if DJ Lagway's limited, it's going to maybe open up some reps a bit for some other quarterbacks. And Tramel Jones is cleared, the true freshman. Got injured early his senior season here in Mandarin, here in Jacksonville. Bounces back and not 100%, but cleared. Billy Napier said he's been going through the workouts and going through and has been able to go through the workouts and limited in some capacity. So, but he is cleared, not 100%. So, but welcome news. When you have an injury in your senior season of high school football, and you're not even a year later, you early enroll at Florida or your college destination, and you're ready to go. But of course, Harrison Bailey probably going to get a little bit more reps here coming up there for the quarterbacks, Aiden Warner as well. So we'll just see how it plays along. I don't know what it means for scrimmages and spring games and stuff. Is it absolutely necessary for DJ Lagway to be out there for Florida to reach its full potential? Probably not. Probably not. It would certainly help. I think it would help the teammates more so than Lagway. The new receivers coming in. Trey Wilson a bit too coming back, and he's going to be cleared, ready to go. And like I said, that's the aspect of it for me is just kind of getting getting into the flow with your teammates, getting into the flow if you're a quarterback with your wide receiver and your offensive line and all that stuff. So it would be better if he was out there, of course, not shying away from that. But is it? If he goes out there and plays every game in this 2025 season, and we're going to go back and look at this spring and say, that was the difference in a win or two, I won't go that far with it. If he's out there playing every game, this, to me, is a non-issue. We will have to see. We'll have to see when we get to the season if it plays out that way. But as of now, as we sit here Thursday, March 6th, and spring practice is kicking off, David Waters is not too concerned. So hopefully that doesn't change, of course. So there's about 16 Gators included on that injury report there. And Billy Napier did say about the injury report, it's only going to come from him this spring. So not really going to come from players or assistant coaches or anything like that. He will be the one to update injuries all throughout spring. So Trey Wilson will be out there. He'll be able to do a lot in practice, working his way back from a season-ending injury for his congenital hip issue. So, of course, but should be A-OK, ready to go participate in a lot of spring. Billy Napier did say, quote, he'll be able to do almost everything. I think we're managing volume right now and return to play more than anything. So he's full speed, routes on air, 7-on-7, and then we're just basically compartmentalizing the playbook, trying to manage a guy who was put on the shelf for a while. So we got to ramp up his activity and be smart there. I mean, these guys, you guys who have played some, your Trey Wilsons. I mean, we saw what he was able to do as a true freshman, and missing a good bit of fall camp and what he was able to do as a freshman. So not so much integral for him to be out there rep after rep, play after play, sequence after sequence out there for spring football. So it's okay. He's not out there either for much. Now, I mean, that was a long list. Certainly wish, it was some we knew, some we'll go through it right quick and just kind of go through storylines here. Was a little eye-opening of how many guys were named, but it's spring football. Maybe it's orange and blue glasses. Maybe maybe that's the angle to it. I'm just not all that worried about these. Maybe because some of them we just knew about coming in and all the limitations there. But look, if this was fall and we had a list like this and a list of like what we saw a good bit last year in the season, sure, I'd be concerned. But this is the time for players to rest, recoup, still coming off of a season. And we knew how beat up this team was to end last year. So we knew a lot of guys would be needing off-season surgeries and still recuperating from those injuries in 2025. So not a huge surprise. DJ Lagway, of course, we mentioned him, talked about him. Trayon Webb at running back as well. He's going to be limited. That fractured tibia, of course, for him. So Jaden Ball, Jacoby Jackson. There's freshmen that are coming in, going to get more of a more opportunity, of course. And interesting, for Webb, because I do think a spring pretty important for him, because was the guy coming into last year behind Montrell Johnson, gets hurt, and maybe Jaden Ball takes over anyway. Maybe Jacoby Jackson takes over anyway. But now we know what those guys can do. We know those guys are pretty good. Where does Trayon Webb fit into all this? So I think it would be more beneficial if he could take part in spring practice, but somewhat limited, and we'll see probably a healthier, closer to 100% Trayon Webb in fall camp. Now, Chad Gasper, true freshman, he's got a knee. We don't expect much from him this spring. We just talked about Trey Wilson as well. Khalil Jackson at wide receiver, and his knee injury was limited out there in the first practice today, was off to the side. Caleb Banks, that was a little bit of surprise as well for him in the foot. I think we got word of that. I guess maybe it wasn't a surprise. I do remember getting word of that after the season, Caleb Banks in the foot. But I don't think many people are concerned here. Jamari Lyons and his ankle, of course. Billy Napier was just raved about him in the press conference today and saying, we thought he was starter quality when he went down in preseason fall camp last year. And the guys that we remember, and we were hitting that home of, I was trying to let everybody know at that point what I was hearing. Billy Napier confirmed it. But before he even confirmed it, and I think when he got hurt last year, and even again today, saying, hey, we thought he was starter quality. If Cam Jackson was a 1A, Jamari Lyons was a 1B. Yeah, he was right there. He technically, quote, air quotes, was a starter. Jamari Lyons was going to do good things for the Gators defensive line. Still recovering a bit. We'll see. Don't necessarily know how much he'll take part. I think he'll be available in some things, but more than likely playing on the safe side with him. A pretty gruesome injury in preseason fall camp will open the door for some younger guys as well. Kind of going to your point earlier, Harrison, and thanks for the comment here, you guys. And Harrison chimes in, David, do you think the staff is confident in our nose tackle depth, or do we target one in the spring portal? I think it's all depending on who becomes available. I mean, we already know Florida was interested in the winter portal for defensive tackles, so it's not a surprise. It certainly wasn't. I forget his name, the guy that was at Ohio State. He, I forget. I don't remember where he ended up going. And then, of course, Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky ends up going to USC. Those were the only two. I think Florida was more than likely going to be a little selective there. They really like Mekhi Burrow. We heard Pup Howard, really rave about Mekhi Burrow last week on Gators Breakdown. Billy Napier kind of singled him out today as well in the press conference, and then DeAndre Robinson as well, and mentioned how they have some guys on that defensive line who can play nose, who can play edge, or not necessarily edge, end. They can play nose tackle, or they can play defensive end. So some position flexibility there, but Jamari Lyons was one of those guys as well. But certainly ready to see him go. And hopefully when fall camp rolls around, we'll be hearing his name a good bit more as far as recovering and getting on that defensive line depth. True freshman Stephon Shivers, lower back, so he'll be limited somewhat as well. Grayson Howard, if I remember right, I don't know if he was out at practice all that much today. Still rehabbing with his ankle injury. The high ankle, of course, and you heard him last week on Gators Breakdown saying, after that Texas game, you probably shouldn't have been playing in that Texas game, but it's going to take a lot to take Pup Howard off the field. Was just not in a good shape after that Texas game. Missed those last 4 games of the season. Still rehabbing from that. Sharif Denson's going to be somewhat limited this spring as well. You heard Billy Napier mention him. He will be out there. He will be taking part there in that nickel spot there for the Gators. Aaron Gates, of course, will not be in that nickel star spot. So Sharif Denson, getting some play there. And Billy Napier did mention too in the press conference about the 3 safety spots, and you're free, you're strong, and you're star. And he says, look, they're very interchangeable. And that young players like Josiah Davis, Greg Smith, Stubbs, and Hayward. I mean, he mentioned all 4 of those guys. And, the young guys, the guys who have been on this roster, and then the young guys, the early enrollees who were highly rated recruits coming in. And with Florida nursing, we talked about this all the way leading up to spring practice about how much flexibility Florida's going to have on that back end because of all those injuries that we're discussing, especially in the defensive backfield. So Aaron Gates, hey, you're going to be nursing that knee injury that he suffered late in the season. So all three of those safety spots kind of interchangeable. So Josiah Davis, Greg Smith, Stubbs, Hayward. Hey, Florida might need some help at nickel right now with Aaron Gates being there. Without Aaron Gates being there, Sharif Denson nursing an injury as well will be limited. So it's going to open the door for some new guys in some new spots for them. Jameer Grimsley going to be out as well. Dijon Johnson, as you heard, Billy Napier said should be available later in the spring. Bryce Thornton, another defensive back, nursing an ankle injury. So, there you go. Probably a little bit more beat up than I'd like to be. We'd all love to be 100% right now. Some of these are precaution, recoveries and such, not much of a big deal. I think I go back to last year, and it really helped at the linebacker spot. Remember Florida was going through some injuries at the linebacker spot. You had to rely on a transfer in Pup Howard in his first year, which we thought he would be able to come right in and transition pretty fast anyway. Then Miles Graham, he gets a little bit of playing time in the spring, and he gets a back injury. But as we talked about in the last episode of Gators Breakdown, was a really, really good player by the end of the year. So Florida's a little thin at linebacker. Some guys got some reps. I think Jaden Robinson was a really big benefactor in that. He played really well last year. So that's going to go for the defensive backfield this year. That's going to be the main spot where Florida's fighting through a bunch of injuries and recoveries and guys who are going to be limited, opening up some opportunity. That's what spring football is all about anyway. Took advantage of it last year. Got along the offensive line as well, with some guys limited there. So more reps for younger guys, help them come along faster, getting ready for fall camp. So, all right, let's keep it going here. And let's dive into the offensive line a little bit. One more comment. Let's see before I go here. As we were talking quarterback, Harrison threw in. How many games would we win this year if Harrison Bailey started every game? And then Sean Abel says, think another version of Mertz, stronger arm, but less experienced. Hey, Sean, it's funny, man. Mertz was the name I brought up earlier as well. Because somebody else didn't get his breakdown plus. And when we kind of had this same conversation here about what could you expect out of Harrison Bailey. And I was like, yeah, it's probably a worse version of Graham Mertz, not bringing anywhere near the experience Graham Mertz brought from Wisconsin. I don't want to see it. I think ideally, Harrison Bailey is only an emergency quarterback, a mop-up duty quarterback. The less we see of Harrison Bailey, the better. Unless it's a game like Long Island, and then I hope to see him in the entire second half of that game. And USF, I hope Florida's up by a couple scores in late third quarter, fourth quarter, and he's mop-up duty that game. And then hopefully in the SEC schedule, you start blowing out some teams, and that's the only way I want to see Harrison Bailey. Mop-up duty and blowouts, that's the gist of it. that's the only time so if we see a bunch of Harrison Bailey, hopefully it's in that category, and not because DJ Lagway's injured. All right, Shell Williams, let me get to this question, then I'll move forward to the offensive line a bit. Question for you, Dave. Who do you think trying to get this, be a 2-back or 3-back rotation? That's a good one. I think mainly a 2-back rotation. I think it's going to mainly be Ball, mainly Jacoby Jackson. We'll see where Trayon Webb fits into that if he gets fully healthy in time. There's not been shy, of course, in his tenure, Billy Napier, Jabbar Jalouk, to get freshman running backs ready and have them be effective. Saw it year one. Saw it year one with Trevor Etienne. Saw it last year with Jaden Ball. Going to have guys ready. They're going to have freshmen ready. Do they have to rely on them? That's going to be the question. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this. That's going to, when we hear from Jalouk and we hear from some of these running backs, I don't want to get too deep into it here. we'll talk about running backs whenever, they come up in the press conference session. But certainly, if a freshman proves himself, this staff has shown they will play. And we also let's not forget about KD Daniels from last year. I mean, Florida's deep here. Deep here. Waltez Clark, Byron Lewis, your freshman that you're going to be looking out for, Chad Gasper, nursing an injury. I'd expect him to redshirt. But Byron Lewis, Waltez Clark, coming in. If those guys prove it, sure. But man, I just I don't know if I see it as much as we have seen it before. As much as when we saw it with Etienne, as much as when we saw it with Ball. I mean, Ball because Etienne transfers out. Montrell Johnson is injured a good bit of the 2024 season. It just opens the way. So I'm not sure because of Ball and Jackson, and we'll see where Webb is and KD Daniels too. I think it's going to be a little harder for freshmen to break through this year. What's up, One Way? Thanks for hopping in, man. Let's go to offensive line talk. Billy Napier did put it out today. Let's talk about that situation. Big story here is, 4 proven starters coming back for 2025, and there's been a lot of attention on that right tackle spot. Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon graduates, heading to the NFL. I mean, he's shooting up draft boards a bit with the way he ended the season, the way he's testing. Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, probably going to be a okay NFL player. But interesting development, of course, and maybe unexpected development. Billy Napier comes out and says, hey, Bryce Lovett, he might be taking that right tackle spot. He's emerging as that 5th starter. Now, redshirt sophomore, of course, shown some real promise. Last season, started 3 games, including, now it's even more notable because it's the position he's going to be playing. He had that notable performance at right tackle in the Gasparilla Bowl. Before that, he was mainly rotating in at guard. So he played about 300 snaps during the regular season and 72 reps in the bowl game. And worth noting about him is, while he hadn't really played right tackle at Florida until that bowl game, it's not really a new position for him. Played there in high school, redshirted his freshman year, made the most of his opportunities last season. And numbers back it up as well. He only allowed 1 sack, 7 quarterback pressures, and 171 passing snaps. Pro Football Focus gave him a solid 78.5 grade in pass protection and a 70.2 in run blocking. But it may not be locked up, but he's going to start spring practice at that right tackle. And look, I probably expect him to keep it along the way. But you want competition. And the good thing is Florida has competition. Florida has competition at this right tackle spot. It's a good thing. All along the offensive line, actually. But more so at this right tackle spot. Other options there, Devin Manuel, redshirt senior, was injured a good bit last year. Was kind of going to be remember last spring was playing left tackle while Austin Barber was nursing some injuries. Then Devin Manuel gets hurt during the season. But I think he can be a swing tackle. But go be in that competition at right tackle. But if he needs to back up Lovett, needs to back up Barber, as long as he can stay healthy, I think he'll be able to. Cade Jones, redshirt sophomore, go be in the mix. Redshirt freshman, Fletcher Westphal. I mean, it's a bunch of redshirt guys. Redshirt sophomore, Cade Jones, redshirt freshman, Fletcher Westphal. I mean, that's what you find along the offensive line. Also, redshirt freshman, Enoch Wangoy. True freshman, Tavares Dice, Jahari Medlock. So there's going to be options there. But I'm excited to watch a competition between Devin Manuel and Bryce Lovett. But man, your Fletcher Westphal was highly regarded recruit for the offensive line. I mean, I expect to hear his name. I think recruiting, of course, along the offensive line, been kind of controversial. It has gotten better. There are some bright spots along the way. It's time to see it. Time to see it. Also, let's not overlook it. That was one position battle we expected to hear about. Glad he was asked about it today, and glad Billy Napier was forthcoming enough to say, hey, yeah, we're going to start Bryce Lovett there. Not we'll see. We'll get into camp, and we'll play this guy. We'll play that guy in there. And no, come out and said, okay, Bryce Lovett, that's going to be our guy to start with. But, hey, guys, there's also some interesting shuffling happening on the interior. Roderick Kearney is going to transition from center to guard. He's been cross-training. We're going to concentrate more at the guard spot now. Marcus Mascall, he'll be moving to center. And then Jason Zandamela, another redshirt freshman, he's also making strides at the center position. That was thought to be his position more so anyway. I figured this was going to happen to Kearney once Zandamela signed with the Gators last year. To me, that was kind of an early sign that we may see Roderick Kearney slide in the garden. So it's playing out that way. Zandamela, of course, was a highly regarded high school recruit. Had a cup of coffee at USC. Transferred to Florida before he even played a game for USC. Look, and for somebody like Roderick Kearney in his third year, he had the body type that really needed to be developed. Not necessarily surprised we didn't see him early on, but hey, it's year 3 and a highly regarded 4-star offensive lineman. So yeah, it's going to be time for Roderick Kearney to get into the mix a bit. But of course, 4 or 5 starters returning. But you're talking now about backups for Jake Slaughter, Najee Harris, Damian George. And Harrison, you read my mind, man. You read my mind. Is George a lock to start, or can Kearney win it? I think that might actually be a low-key battle. I really do. It might be a low-key battle there. But Coach Napier really does seem optimistic about the whole unit. Rob Sell, John DeCoster, still the 2-coach system there. Riley Simons, Caleb Johnson part of it. And as Napier put it, looking at all the players they've recruited over the past 3 years, things are starting to come together. And guys, I got thinking when he said that, and I was listening to his press conference about the offensive line, and Damian George, Jason Zandamela, if I remember right, it's about the only transfers in the group. Right now, it's mostly the homegrown talent along the offensive line room. And if development is going to be the calling card, then we should see it pay off. Development is going to be the staff's playing card. And the recruiting, it's been a roller coaster, trending up a little bit overall on the offensive line. It's time to see it pay off. Jason Sauls does say something like that too, I guess. Time to see development happen with quality depth. I'm very excited about the offensive line this year, but want to see what we have happening for 26. Yeah, I think, there's some good options in state. I think maybe more so for interior offensive linemen. But yeah, it's there's still certainly room for better recruiting along the offensive line. It's gotten better, and there have been some bright spots. But hopefully, redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores, and guys that you're going to be developing. So, it's a group that's no longer a liability. Now it's about the ceiling. That'll kind of be the theme for this spring as we get into more offensive line talk. I believe tonight, Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber were talking, so we'll get into some offensive line talk pretty soon here on the podcast. What's the ceiling for that group? All right, let's get into some more news here before we get into the commitment of Izayia Williams. LJ McCray moving to the jack edge spot and playing that role more than the F edge spot. Hopefully, unfortunately, the first thing that popped in my head with this is like, okay, please, a switch of positions here. This one's not so drastic, but hopefully it goes better than the main one last season when they decided to move Kelby Collins to more inside instead of the defensive end or edge spot. They tried to move him more inside, more of a hand in the dirt guy, and just never made an impact. I don't think that'd be the situation here. I don't. McCray was always thought to be a guy that could play multiple positions, should be able to just slide over and still get into the backfield. And a lot of movement here. A lot of movement here at this edge spot. Just a spoon on the way out. transfers to Arkansas. TJ Searcy to A&M. Jack Pyburn to LSU. Guys who played a lot of football in their careers, played a lot of football for you last year. You're going to be going up against Searcy, going to be going up against Pyburn. So lost some of your playmakers there. So Florida's going to have to find some playmakers at edge. There's some names. There's some names, of course. But back to McCray for a second. True freshman last year, of course. Not a whole lot of stats to really throw out there. Position change could unlock more opportunities for him to impact games. I'm not discouraged at all that he did go out there and didn't have an all-SEC freshman type of season. It happens. And just think about all the guys that were in front of him, guys that were making plays for this defense. It's going to be hard to break through. All right, it's breakthrough time now. Breakthrough time now. Gators return. Top pass rusher from last season, Tyreek Sapp, of course. George Gums Jr. So Tyreek Sapp at that F spot. George Gums at that Jack spot. Cameron James also returns. Productive sophomore season. 28 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 for a loss. Billy Napier had to say about him, just in general, we've been very pleased about Cam James and Gums being the two that took a huge step. And then here comes Sapp being the steady, kind of alpha vocal leader. So, of course, Florida had to go bolster depth there at that spot. So you're going to see some maneuverability. McCray sliding over. Had to go get Kofi Asari from UMass. 2 highly rated they're really high on Jaden Woods and Jalen Wiggins at the spot as well. As we saw last year, hard for freshmen to come through. Maybe more of an opportunity this year, depending on what happens. And can Kofi Asari duplicate what we saw as a transfer from George Gums last year? If he does, then okay, you won't need as much of an impact from Jaden Woods and Jalen Wiggins. And if LJ McCray is your guy as well. So if you're seeing Jaden Woods and Jalen Wiggins out there making plays, they probably had to go through a lot to earn it. Because I do think there's a lot of potential in front of them. Napier, of course, impressed with the newcomers during pre-spring preparations. Quote, I think McCray's move has been beneficial, he said. And I'm really pleased with Jaden Woods, Kofi. Wiggins has been impressive. Kofi being a veteran. And this Jaden Woods guy has stood out. And we haven't even started yet. There we go. That was the main updates, I think, from Billy Napier in the press conference. Of course, you guys can go out there. It's about a 30-minute press conference, so hard to squeeze it all in here. But, hey, we're about 40 minutes talking about it all right here. And just that was the main 3 takeaways for me. As I said, we got plenty. Spring practice just started. We'll go position by position. All that good stuff all throughout spring practice. There'll be plenty of storylines galore. Hopefully no injury storylines galore. But certainly we'll go position by position. All right, well, let me get into some more comments before we get into some recruiting. One Way 26 popped in here. This past season has been by far one of the most interesting in years, but I would have to ask, do you think last season may have raised some eyebrows in the coach's room as far as having that 3rd, 4th guy ready since we had guys like Montrell Webb in the running back room go down? Do you think this group brings a lot more than last cycle? Okay, kind of already discussed that there. I said that you'll have your top 2. That's kind of the way it's been. You have your top 2 and then a 3rd who kind of lags behind and carries. You'll have your main 2. To me, that's Ball and Jacoby Jackson this year. And then what happens with Trayon Webb, KD Daniels, more than the freshmen. I think it's going to take a lot for those freshmen to break through this year. But one more time, at the running back spot, and mostly for the whole roster. If you're a freshman, you come in and you go out there and show out and show that you deserve the reps, this staff will give it to you. They will. But, man, after what we saw from Jaden Ball last year and Jacoby Jackson and those 2 guys returning, I think it's going to be a little harder this year. But going to your point one way, if injuries happen, yeah, then KD Daniels needs to be ready. Maybe Byron Lewis and Waltez Clark need to be ready as well. Okay, let's get into it. It is time to talk a little bit of recruiting. Kind of knew this one was coming at some point early Thursday. And of course, we saw some of the crystal balls come in and all that. But of course, some behind the scenes talk as well. And hey, this one might be happening pretty soon. Well, Gator Nation, here we are. We got to commit. And that is Izayia Williams, a 4-star on both the recruiting services, a 4-star on the 24/7 Sports Composite. He is the 53rd overall player and the 3rd-ranked linebacker in the country, and the On3 industry ranking of 4-star as well. 42nd overall and the 3rd-ranked linebacker there as well. 6'1", 215 pounds from Leesburg, Florida. Earlier this year, of course, participated in the Under Armour All-American game, where he totaled a game-high 7 tackles. In this past 2024 season, he's a two-way player as a junior at Tavares, which competed in Florida's 3A classification, credited with 125 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and an interception on defense per max preps. Also carried the ball 23 times for 423 yards, 18.4 yards per carry, and 6 touchdowns, while also catching 5 passes for 97 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Izayia Williams doing it on both sides of the ball. Billy Napier, Ron Roberts, Robert Balla, new coach, making a little bit of an impact here. And maybe most important is assistant linebacker coach Kanan Gibbs, but all playing a part here in landing the pledge here. And of course, the timeline is interesting on this one. And interesting because, earlier in the process, Williams also made commitments to Florida State, Louisville, Syracuse. When Florida was really, really getting into this one, Williams was committed to Syracuse. But, FSU, Louisville, Syracuse, respectively. So you could see why schools may be hesitant here, but Florida's been a factor. And look, while you would understand some hesitancy here, you still had Alabama, Florida State, Colorado, Georgia, Penn State as his additional finalist. But even with all that and the competition here, Florida ramped up the pressure and secured a commitment here in March. So certainly after so many commitments, there's some questions here. But, hopefully this one works out in the end. And here recently, the thought was probably a Florida-Alabama battle over the rest. And it's the Gators who did get the commitment right here in March. Gatorville joined his Twitter space there on Wednesday night, and he and I have had some long, lengthy, over the last, probably half a year or so, about this Izayia Williams kid. I remember Gatorville. He says, "What's good, Dave? Izayia is a Gator finally. We've been saying this." I had this. We had this graphic in the draft for a while, didn't we? So we thought it was going to happen a long time ago, and then it didn't happen. And then, of course, you can see where stats might be gun shy a little bit, of course, because of how many commitments are in play here. But the Gators, full court press here lately, really ramping up the pressure, going all in right here in March and getting the commitment here. So interesting there. But of course, why would you want a player like this? And let's take a look at a little bit of film here and a scouting report. So 24/7 Sports offers this scouting report from Andrew Ivins, supercharged linebacker with the athletic juice to make headlines at the NFL scouting combine one day, but one that is still discovering all of his capabilities. Owns elite speed and explosion, scores for someone that already pushing 215 pounds and has one of the more unique track and field profiles in the class. Closes gaps with a jurisdiction and can turn into a mallet as he slams opponents. Owns rare sideline to sideline range with his gallop and has continued to improve depth perception as a drop coverage defender. And look, and we know if you're a Ron Roberts linebacker dropping into coverage, is going to have to be a talent. It's going to have to be a talent. The sim pressures and the creepers and all that, that's going to come into play. So one who has improving in that in high school, you can see why it would be such a fit. And Ron Roberts was really on Izayia Williams lately. Continuing the scouting report, should, in theory, be able to offer some alignment flexibility at his next stop, as he has flashed the ability to dip and rip while taxing the edge. Suitable as an open field tackler at this stage, but has to get better at consistently putting himself in favorable positions. Improved stack skills will also go a long way, could fit into a variety of different schemes, and role will likely hinge on how he feels into his larger features, as he's on the younger side. A bit of a big fish in a small pond, but looked the part for stretches in a best-on-best setting at the annual Under Armour All-American game. Should be viewed as a full-tilt second-level defender with true three-down capabilities and all-conference potential if it all comes together. Man, that's glowing. That's pretty good. That's the type of scouting report you want to hear. Now, look, most of those are pretty good. Most of the scouting reports are, a bit on the positive side. But when you're the third-ranked linebacker in the country, I'd expect it to be on the positive side. But certainly, I like what I heard here and how he would fit. I mean, there you go. Getting the safety right there, diagnosing the play, finding a hole to go through. And you've seen it too, where he's been up on the line. Here, okay, boom, shedding off of a block. Talking about the pursuit there as well. But you've seen it in a variety of ways, kind of like that scouting report say, whether he'd be closer to the line of scrimmage, whether it be, more of a second level linebacker. Here he is dropping into coverage right there. But then coming up, making the play on the quarterback, getting the sack anyway. After he dropped into coverage, that was his first responsibility there in that play, if you're watching the highlights here on YouTube. So there you go, kind of creeping up right there and making a play on the screen, kind of batting that down. So hopefully you enjoyed those highlights there of Izayia Williams, but certainly continuing a room that's going to be ever so good for the Gators. Williams now in the fold. So for the class of 2026, the Gators now sit with 3 verbal commitments. Along with the newest addition of Williams, the Gators class, of course, is made up of Tampa quarterback from Jesuit Will Griffin, who also played in the Under Armour game. And then from Orlando, First Academy 3-star safety Devin Jackson. So kind of going to this. I mean, overall big picture look here, another top linebacker. And you go back to Pup Howard a few classes ago. Maybe didn't end up at Florida originally, but there now. So a few classes ago, Pup Howard. Then the class after that, a couple classes ago, Miles Graham and Aaron Childs. Last class had 4-star Ty Jackson, who is just getting rave reviews. Miles Johnson, who was once highly rated before injuries. And now add Williams to the mix, and hopefully when this class is said and done, he's in this class, and it sets up this room to continue its upward trend after so many years of futility at the position. You love what Florida already has on the roster, and if Williams is in this signing class next December, now of course transfer portal and all that stuff comes into play too, but we don't have to mention that for every freaking recruit. We know it's a reality. But if you can keep him and you add him to this room, he's just going to continue what we have seen at that position the last couple of years. It's a good pickup for the Gators. Had the recent decommitment of Jalen Waters. So getting back in the fold here for the class of 2026 with a big-time defensive commit at the linebacker spot, Izayia Williams. All right. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for hopping in on this episode of Gators Breakdown. One way, let me get to your last comment right here. Is it too early to say we make the playoffs in 2025? Because if it is, I still like us as one of those 12 teams. No, it ain't too early. I mean, make your pick now. I mean, is spring practice really going to change your mind? Not really. We already know the schedule. You already know the roster for the most part. A lot of key pieces coming back. Spring practice shouldn't really have an effect on what you think about now, unless some big injury happens, of course. But the only one that's really going to make that big of a difference would be Lagway. And look, we talked about that earlier, but he's going to be limited. He's not going to, unless something goes really wrong. But no, that's the only injury that can happen that would mass change your expectations, I think. And maybe a Banks or a Sapp as well. But the only one where you're going to, if you have Florida in the playoff mix right now, that would be the only type of injury that would say, okay, no, definitely not. Florida's not making it. Hopefully we won't have to worry about that. And I still got it off to the side. Izayia Williams there with one of his running back carries. I just saw him go for a touchdown. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for hopping in. Spring practice underway. We'll have multiple episodes a week for about the next month or so since spring practice is starting out. So plenty of Gators breakdown on the way during spring ball. One more time, go support these student athletes with Florida Victorious. Link is in the description there. Get a lot of good value there now. But that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.